FSLY has lost almost 1/3 of its valuation in just a day. But today we're going to forget about FSLY and we're going to take a look at some of its competitors. There's 3 competitors that we're going to take a look at today. And we're going to see, are those better investments than FSLY right now? So first, we're going to take a look at who those competitors are. And for each of those companies, we're going to do a bit of a fundamental analysis. Take a look at things like their revenue growth, their margins, their balance sheets to try to see if, hey, maybe right now there might be better investments compared to FSLY. Like always, if you're new to my channel, if you're a long-term investor, if you like to learn about growth stocks, make sure to hit that subscribe button. To all my returning viewers, thank you so much for the support. It truly means a lot. I truly appreciate it, from my YouTube listeners to my podcast listeners. You guys are awesome. Like always, if you want to get in contact with me, YouTube comments, you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Twitch live streaming, or you can find me on my Discord channel, which is free to anybody that wants to join. Also, josenaharo.com. Like always, everything I say here is just my opinions. By no means is it any advice, as I am not a professional. So make sure to talk to a financial advisor before making any financial decisions. All right, let's get started. But before we get started, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, the thumbs up. It helps the small channel out so much, and I truly appreciate it. Like I mentioned, today we're going to take a look at some of FSLY's competitors. We're going to look at FSLY, ACAM, Cloudflare, and Limelight. These are all competitors in the CDN market. And let me know right now in the comments, guys, do you think any of them are better than FSLY right now? I do believe a lot of people were talking about Limelight, and Cloudflare is one that's just a market monster right now. So let me know in the comments, is there anyone that you guys think might beat FSLY right now? And also, don't forget to hit that link on Webull. Is here on my pinned comments and on my description. If you guys sign up to Webull and follow the rules there, we both can get a free stock. And what's better than a free stock? So I appreciate all those that have done that. All right, so here this Excel sheet is gonna be one to help just keep track. And we're gonna first, let's start off by looking at stock performance. So using something like this to try to find the competitors and see how they're kind of doing within the market, I believe is a great tool to use, right? Because there's many competitors for any company within that market. So by doing a quick analysis like this, it can kind of shine a light to show, hey, this company is definitely not growing as fast as FSLY. It doesn't have as margins as strong as that. Again, and then at the same time, it can show us the light. It can shine the light on some that many people might not be looking at and is doing a lot better than FSLY. So I do believe something like this adds great value to everybody. And I recommend for people to start doing something like this when looking for competitors in their market. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is stock performance. So here, let's start off with FSLY. Let me just move this to the side. So FSLY right now has done 317% year to date to investors. Next, let's take a look at ACAM, and this is ticker AKAM to all my podcast listeners. And actually, before we go any further, I want to show you guys how I found the competitors. So I pretty much just went to google.com and put FSLY's competitors in the CDN market, content delivery network. And here we have FSLY, and that's our big guy right now. And some other competitors. StackPath, unfortunately, they're not public. Cloudflare, a lot of people are talking about that, and that's the one of them we're going to look at. AWS, which is part of Amazon, so no point in looking at that. Akamai, ticker AKM, we're also looking at that. And Limelight, which is another one, Limelight Networks. It's another one I kept getting a lot of posts on my previous videos on FSLY, so I decided to do that one too. Level 3 is another one that's public, but this one's owned by CenturyLink, and they have other products, so I didn't want to introduce them here. So right now, like I mentioned, let's now take a look at ACAM and their price performance. So ACAM's price performance is a lot lower than FSLY's, only 24%. Next, let's take a look at Cloudflare. Cloudflare is pretty much there with FSLY at 245%. This is the one second in place. And now we're going to take a look at Limelight. Limelight right now has produced 44%. So let's go back to our sheet right now. In form of stock performance, FSLY was number 1, Cloudflare was number 2, Limelight was number 3, and ACAM was number 4. Now let's take a look at future growth. Which one is expected to grow the fastest compared to the others? Let's start off with FSLY. FSLY right now, its revenue is expected to grow 30.5% on average for the next 3 years annually. That is super strong. Many investors I know consider any annual growth to over 15 to be super strong. So here we see FSLY at 30%. Next, let's take a look at ACAM. ACAM is expected to grow 7%, so a lot slower than FSLY. We can see why that price performance is a lot different when we have to, that stock price performance is a lot different when taking a look at FSLY and ACAM. Next, let's take a look at Cloudflare. Cloudflare is 25.9%, so pretty similar to FSLY, not as strong, but again, that stock price performance is not as strong either. So right now, analysts are expecting FSLY to grow a bit faster than Cloudflare as well. Next, we're going to take a look at Limelight. Limelight is 11.5%. So now let's go back to the sheet. And again, this is actually the same numbers, and that kind of correlates, right? Obviously, investors are willing to pay more for a company that is growing faster. It's expected to grow faster compared to its competitors. FSLY was expected to grow 30%. Cloudflare, if I remember, was 25%. Limelight was 11%, and ACAM was in the high single digits. So again, that expected future growth kind of mirrors that stock price performance, right? Now let's take a look at past growth. And by past growth, what we're going to take a look at is I want to take a look at how much revenue has grown in the past 2 years on average for each company. So first, let's take a look at FSLY. That's how we've been doing it. So FSLY in 2019, it grew its revenue 38.6%. In 2018, it grew 37.8%. So on average, FSLY in the past 2 years has grown about 38% annually. Now let's take a look at ACAM. Do you guys believe it's grown faster or slower than FSLY? To me, I'm going to say it's going to be a lot slower. So ACAM in 2019 grew 6%. In 2018, grew 9%. So an average of about 7-8%. A lot further from that FSLY's 38%. Now let's take a look at Cloudflare. Cloudflare, actually that's FSLY. Cloudflare, and for those that don't know, my apologies. Cloudflare is ticker NET, and Limelight is ticker LLNW. My apologies to all my podcast listeners for not saying that earlier. But now let's take a look at NET. NET in 2019 grew 48.9%, and in 2018 grew 42.8%. So NET actually in the past 2 years has grown faster than FSLY. That's pretty impressive. And now if we take a look at Limelight, ticker LLNW to my podcast listeners, 2019 it grew 2.5%, 2018 it grew 6.13%. So that's on average of about around 4%. So now we're going to see a little difference. Cloudflare here is the leader in past growth, followed by FSLY, followed by ACAM, and then following by Limelight. We can still see right now, it does seem like FSLY and Cloudflare are pretty strong right now in terms of both past, future, and stock performance. Now let's take a look at margins. All right, so next what I want to take a look at is the company's margins. And we're going to take a look at both gross margins and profit margins. Let's start off with gross margins. The first thing I see is there's this big leader. And for those that don't know, I'm using lazyfa.com right now. It's one of my favorite websites to use for fundamental analysis. And here I'm looking at trailing 12 months. This is probably one of my favorite timelines to look at, especially when looking at things like margins to see improvements over time. The first thing I see is NET, which is Cloudflare, is the one with the highest gross margins, almost 80%, sitting at about this most recent quarter, about 77.3 when looking at trailing 12 months. Followed by that is ACAM with 65.5%. That's honestly impressive. I thought it was going to be a lot lower, especially with the price performance right now. And then we have FSLY around 57.5. But we can see Cloudflare has way higher gross margins than FSLY and anybody else, about 20% higher than FSLY, about 2,000 basis points. Am I correct in that one? I do believe it's 2,000 basis points. That is insane. That to me is ridiculous. The lowest one is Limelight with 40.3% gross margins. It's the weakest out of all of them. Next, let's take a look at profit margins. Profit margins Unfortunately, none of these companies except ACAM is profitable. And that's why I believe we're seeing a little bit slower growth on ACAM compared to everybody else. So ACAM is no longer in that growth stage. It's more in the kind of stable and slightly growing stage. That's why we've seen pretty low growth in stock price, in historical growth, and in future growth of revenue. But that's definitely one thing to say here. The other thing I'm seeing is the only one that's actually getting close to profitability is Limelight. Trailing 12 months, most recent quarter were negative 3.2%. To put that in perspective, Cloudflare right now is negative 36.7 and Fastly is negative 21.4. On margins, this should just say margins. I'm gonna give it to ACAM for the first points because ACAM, even though it's the only one that's profitable, but it also has the second highest gross margins out of everybody else. So they kind of go well with each other. Next, I'm going to give it to Cloudflare for having the highest gross margins, a lot higher than any other one out there. Then we go with Fastly, and last one goes Limelight. To me, a lot of people were asking my thoughts on Limelight, but right now, based on these numbers, it's not looking well for the company. In my opinions, right? For someone else, it might still look fine. We still got a few things to look at: balance sheet, revenue. In the revenue, I want to see how big the company is really at right now. And next, the last thing we're going to do is valuation and finish it with my thoughts. So now let's take a look at balance sheets. Let's start off with the balance sheet of Fastly, and that's how we've been doing it. So balance sheet, what I want to take a look at is one, take a look at their cash, and then take a look at their debt and see how strong it is. Remember, most of these are not profitable, so we're going to have to be very strict to those that are not profitable, and we might be a bit lenient to ACAM, who is profitable at the moment. Right now, Fastly has about $327 million of cash and about $126 million in current investments, so close to $450 million of quick cash. Non-current debt of about $25 million and current debt about $5 million. So this company has plenty of cash compared to debt. Next, we're going to take a look at ACAM. ACAM, on the other hand, it's on a whole different level. It has $800 million of current investments and $572 million of cash and cash equivalents. But look, it has $2.5 million of non-current debt. But remember, like I mentioned, ACAM is one that's profitable right now, so it's okay for them to be for them to have a stronger debt than they do cash. To me, that's a-okay. Next, let's take a look at Net. Net, which is Cloudflare, has current investments of $755 million, and it has cash of $322. So about $1.1 million of quick cash. They have $400 million of non-current debt and $17 million of current debt. Cloudflare also has a very strong balance sheet, in my opinion. Next, we're going to take a look at Limelight. Limelight, unfortunately, has right now only $18 million in cash and cash equivalents, no current investments, and they have about $12 million in current debt, and they have about $2 million of current debt. So $12 million of non-current and $2 million of current debt. So this one is closer to a 1-to-1 ratio, but remember, it's not profitable. So it's not a weak balance sheet, but it's not my favorite. If I honestly, based on my points on my favorites, I want to give number one to both Cloudflare and Fastly. They both have a very strong balance sheet. I would give number two to ACAM, and I would give number three to Limelight. The reason Cloudflare and Fastly got one is we saw that debt to cash ratio is humongously, they're in opposite ranges. They have plenty of cash to be able to survive. Now let's take a look at revenue. I just want to see historically which one is doing the biggest numbers. Let's start off with Fastly right now. Fastly this year, actually let's take a look at trailing 12 months instead. Trailing 12 months for Fastly is $246 million. Now let's take a look at trailing 12 months for ACAM. This is closer to 3.04 billion. So this is a big boy right here. Next, if we take a look at net revenue, which is Cloudflare, this right now at the moment has about 348. So it's a bit larger than Fastly, but not by much, right? Yeah, not by much. Now we're going to take a look at Limelight, and Limelight is right now 227. So here, the one with the biggest market right now is ACAM. And the reason I'm gonna say this right now is ACAM probably has a lot of other markets that they're in outside of CDN, where Fastly, Cloudflare, and Limelight are mainly in those markets alone. So then Cloudflare gets number 2, Fastly gets number 3, and Limelight gets number 4. Again, Limelight is not doing so well in my opinion. Very slow growth in both future and past growth. Not one I personally would like to invest. ACAM right now is looking like one that's in a not no longer in that growth stage. So not one I personally would like to go, but I can understand why certain investors might prefer ACAM compared to Fastly and Cloudflare. To me right now, it seems like Fastly and Cloudflare are the ones with the better long-term growth in my opinion. Again, these are just my opinions. So now let's take a look at valuation. Valuation, we're just going to look at forward price to sales ratio for the future. The forward price ratio for December 2021 for Fastly is 24.23. For ACAM, I do expect it to be a lot slower because it's one, not growing as fast, two, it's already profitable. So forward price to sales ratio for ACAM is 5.48. Next, for Cloudflare, we're going to have a lot higher. This is crazy. 34.92 compared to Fastly's 25, 24, and then we have Limelight at 2.99. This is pretty low. So valuations, Limelight is going to be the cheapest, followed by ACAM, followed by Fastly, and ending up with Cloudflare. But we got to understand, why is this the thing? Obviously, right, as an investor, I am willing to pay less for Limelight than any of these because one, it was one of the past lowest grower. It's barely growing in the future. It has it's very low in profit margins. It has the worst gross margins, and in my opinions, it had the worst balance sheet. And we can see the smallest revenue. So obviously, for that reasons, I would put Limelight in the cheapest valuations. That makes sense. Fastly and Cloudflare are both growing super fast, have shown strong past growth as well, has shown strong gross margins. We saw better gross margins in Cloudflare, and we see a better balance sheet on them as well. So I would have expected them to be the most expensive. ACAM, I think, is kind of in the middle. To me, like I mentioned, it's not in a place I would invest. It seems like that growth phase has left the building for ACAM. So that's not one I would call. So right now, personally, I think, from my opinion, Cloudflare might be my favorite one right now. All right, so now based on these points, right, I summed them up. Lowest is the better. So Limelight is one I personally, and I'm sorry for those that wanted me to do this Limelight video, I don't think I'm gonna proceed and do any further analysis on Limelight, right? And that's what I mentioned. Videos like this help me out to, hey, who are the companies I should focus on? And to me, Fastly and Cloudflare are the two ones that I should really put my mind into. They're both coming in with 14 points. They kind of tied in for first place. Lowest the better. So ACAM, I can understand why certain investors might prefer ACAM over these other two. It's just in a whole different phase. So it just determines what kind of investor you are. To me, I like a growth stock with a great balance sheet. And to me, Fastly and Cloudflare both hit those marks. Even though they're not profitable right now, they do have a very, very strong balance sheet. One thing I do like about Cloudflare that I believe makes it a bit more expensive than Fastly is that gross margins. Gross margins were a lot higher for Cloudflare than they were for Fastly. But right now, I do think with the current price drop, Fastly is probably for me the better investment to go with opposed to Cloudflare. And the reason I say that is, even though Cloudflare has way better valuation, way better gross margins than Fastly, I just can't see the forward price to sales ratio being that much more expensive. It's almost I want to say 1.5% more expensive. So I would definitely pay a bit more for net right now than for Fastly, but not by that much. That is for sure. Definitely not by that much. So right now, I do believe with the current valuation, Fastly is my favorite one. Cloudflare is one I want to do a little more information digging on. ACAM is probably one that it's okay for me. Limelight is one I would definitely do a hard pass. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you guys want me to check out any other companies and take a look at some of their other competitors and do something very similar to this. Take care, guys. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up and let me know on the comments, were you guys surprised with the overall results? I feel like I'm gonna get some hate because I feel like a lot of people were looking at Limelight and expecting it to be a bit better. Let me know in the comments, what are your thoughts? Take care and see you next time.